It seems to me like the more I use my time, the more time I have to use. There's no way we can go and create a 25th hour for the day, but we can make time. The more we use our time on things that are inspirational and useful and beneficial to us, it seems like the time just stretches. And it's not like the time stops flying, but there's so much more value to witness as it flies by. It's interesting that the word for a satisfied life is fulfilled. You fill it and then you fill it again. Try it for yourself. Plan out a perfectly full day and keep to the plan, and you might shock yourself just how much can be done in those few 24 hours, especially when compared to a day when you might wake up late and get in a few YouTube videos before the day really gets going. And the procrastinator mindset always tells you that the future time is more valuable than the present time, so it's okay to waste a few hours in the present. Unfortunately, the only time we can actually use is the present. You could regret yesterday and plan for tomorrow, but the only time you can actually do something is today. Don't waste your time, young or old. You don't get it back. The United States donates Pfizer vaccines to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Well, more like the United States donates 80 vials of Pfizer vaccines to the Ministry of National Security in Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, each vial contains about 5 doses, so it's about 400 doses donated, and you should be thankful for every gift you get. But I have to wonder. The Pfizer vaccines are transported in specialized cold storage containers. These containers usually contain at minimum 195 vials. So did someone at some point in time open one of these containers, count out 80 specific vials, put them in another special container and donate that to us? That's more work than donating the whole box. You don't usually get that kind of specifics in a donation, but you do get it in a request. And if it was a request, there are lots of very interesting questions to ask, like who could have made such a request, and could they have requested more, and how could they have gotten any when the Prime Minister said there isn't any more to be gotten out there? But those very interesting questions are if it was a request and it's just a donation, remember? Don't worry, folks, we got the answers. Those 80 vials of Pfizer vaccines that were mysteriously donated by the United States, they were a gift for the intelligence community in Trinidad and Tobago, whoever they may be. Thus says the Foreign Affairs Minister. But I don't think that's as comforting an explanation as they may think, because if we're talking about the intelligence community, these are people paid to know things, and then why won't they take the same vaccine that the rest of the country is taking? We just got another 200,000 Sinopharm vaccines, and we've ordered a total of 600,000 of those. Do they know something that we don't? And if they know something, I'd like to know that too. Or it could be, as some suspected, and just meant for those who work closest with the Americans. And in that case, it makes the announcement of this being a donation by the Americans all the more ridiculous. That's like giving a rake to your gardener and boasting about your charity. I have no problem with the US and China trying to outgive each other to prove to us poorer nations who is really the goodest of them all. But at this rate, the United States needs to step up. It seems like we might all be speaking Mandarin very soon. Last week when we had that show of poor planning on the part of the government and a lack of thinking on the part of some citizens, with the mayhem at the start of our vaccination rollout, I saw some people share a post comparing the neat and orderly lines in England to us over here. And I wonder, whenever people make comparisons to Europe, if they ask themselves how long these countries have been countries in the same spot with the same people believing just about the same things, and then to compare that to countries where the Europeans themselves took cultures that never met each other and forced them together with centuries of abuse, and then 50 years down the road to look at them together and compare is hardly a fair comparison. Trinidad did horribly on the vaccination rollout, but that's not because England did better. That's because Trinidad itself can do better. If you're running a race and compare yourself with someone who started before you, then you can underestimate the amount of progress you made. Or if you compare yourself with someone who started after you, you could overestimate the amount of progress you made. And seeing as everyone is running their own unique race, the only comparisons that matter are the ones you make with yourself. Both our finance minister and some in the business community agree that a lot of the problems our National Insurance Board is facing right now may be best helped by raising the age for pension. You see, reality can be very hard and quite unforgiving. A lot of the advancements societies make just have to do with making reality a little bit easier, especially for the most vulnerable among us. The reality is, as you get older, it becomes harder to work, and if you don't work, you won't get resources. But over time, society eased that reality. So if you ask me how I see life as we move on from this pandemic, I think we're already seeing that take shape, with society being unable to protect some of the most vulnerable from their reality. We're already seeing more women leave the formal work sector because the reality is advancements in security, healthcare and access made that possible in the first place. We're already seeing an increase in child marriages because the reality is that's what a lot of parents do with their children if they aren't given other easy alternatives. It's great that our society subsidizes water, electricity and gas rates, but the reality is that's not the price, and it may not be after the next budget. Anyone saw the level of crowds out there in preparation for Trinidad's weekend under house arrest? The Supermarket Association said they put steps in place to be ready for these crowds, which means that they were predictable. We knew these crowds were coming. So whoever made this decision knowingly created a situation to create crowds where we know coronavirus spreads, and then lock all these people in these crowds indoors for a weekend. Indoors where we know the majority of spread occurs, in their households where we now know 50% of people in a household with an infected person also gets infected. Seeing that the government is now mandating and decreeing what people do and where they go in order to stop this spread, and there hasn't been one outbreak linked to a beach since the beginning of this pandemic, it might have made more sense for us to have a decree this weekend that no one stays at home. We must all go to the beaches. It might have had less spread occurring because of it, and it certainly would have had less stress. Imagine spending weeks convincing people vaccinate to operate. The vaccines are here to stop the spread, and then stopping vaccination to lock people indoors. Personal responsibility is key. It's how we solve most problems in the world. But can you pave your road with your personal responsibility? Systemic might be the most overused word of the last couple of years, but that doesn't change the fact that there are systems and people who are paid very well to control them. That reminds me of the history of two schools here in Trinidad, neighboring each other for years. One had the shift system finishing at half day and then sometime in the evening. The other finished at half two. Hardly an incident for years. Then someone changed that system, both schools finishing around the same time. And for whatever the socio-economic or cultural reasons, one school decided to make the other school into their personal bandit buffet on afternoons. Yes, you can say it was the personal responsibility of the little thieves in training or their parents to stop them from stealing, but that's hardly an excuse if you're the one who created the system where one person's personal responsibility or lack thereof has maximum negative impact on another. You can't attempt to manage a human system and discount human nature. Yes, personal responsibility is key. Keep yourselves accountable, but that doesn't prohibit you from keeping those personally responsible for the systems accountable too.